him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Hello listeners, this is Paula Schaffner and welcome back to On the Spot. This week I'll be looking at the 11th Welcome Back Kotter episode, Barbarino's Girl. The IMDb summary is, Mr. Kotter talks Judy into tutoring Barbarino. The two eventually become friends, but Barbarino doesn't want the other sweathogs to know about it. And you can see right there, there's some ambiguity about whether they are platonic friends or not, because girl implies girlfriend. This first aired on November 25th, 1975. Bob Lehendro directed as usual, and this episode was written by Eric Cohen, whose previous episode was The Election. And as you can tell from that summary, we will again be seeing Helen Lembeck as Judy Borden. In fact, this is her fourth episode and arguably her most significant appearance. In the cold opening, the Kotters are playing Scrabble. He's in slacks, a sweater vest, and a collared shirt, none of which particularly matches. She is in a long-sleeve plaid shirt and jeans, so again, casual, probably weekend wear. Without much preface, he says, a lady buys a monkey. Julie asks, what kind of monkey? And he says, a regular monkey. So again, this thing of her kind of pushing back at the jokes and him just plowing through. He imitates a monkey, as he will throughout the joke. The lady's husband hates the monkey because the monkey is always mimicking the husband while eating breakfast, taking a shower, and brushing his teeth. It's driving the guy crazy, so he tries to trick the monkey into cutting its throat, but the monkey hands the husband the razor with the blade in it. Julie laughs a lot. In the first main scene, Kotter enters the classroom to applause, and we'll find out that this is homeroom. He says good morning, but the class looks sullen. The extras in this episode are fluffy-haired boy, yet another new brunette white girl, the main black girl, cap boy without his cap, a possibly new brunette boy, and the boy redhead. Kotter says, as they're probably aware, today's the day they receive their mid-year report cards. This aired in November. I don't know when it's set, but we are in the middle of the TV season. Freddie runs over from his chair, smiles, and holds out an apple with a few bites taken out of it for his favorite teacher. Kotter takes it, disgusted but amused that it's half-eaten. Freddie grins and says he found it that way. Then he says he's only kidding, but it's the thought that counts. Kotter just looks at him, so Freddie gives up and goes back to his seat. Kotter takes the report cards out of his briefcase and starts to talk about how it's not too late to improve their grades. It's not clear in this episode if these are report cards just for social studies or, as would be more typical, report cards with all of the grades on them. I'm assuming that Kotter is passing them out because he's their homeroom teacher. One races over and shows a folded pink piece of paper, which he says is a very important note from home. He unfolds it, and Kotter pretends to be surprised that Juan has a note from home. Although I think this is only the second episode with a note, and it's not from Juan's mother. He says it's from his mother's doctor. As usual, Juan mouths the words, and he also does gestures as Kotter reads the note aloud. Epstein's mother has a heart condition, and any bad news, like Juan getting bad grades, could put her right over the edge. There's applause and whistles. Then it turns out that Juan accidentally gave Kotter the note for English, so he hands Kotter a green note, which is for biology, and finally a yellow note for social studies. So again, this thing of the Sweathogs have unusually colored paper for their schoolwork and notes. The note is of course signed Epstein's mother's doctor. Kotter makes Epstein take the note back and sit down. Kotter asks if there's any excuses, appeals, or calls from the governor, like they're on death row. Arnold ooh-oohs to laughter and applause. He says, not I, Mr. Kotter. I got dignity. I would never beg for a grade. But then he clutches Kotter around the knees, to Juan's surprise and the redhead's amusement. The audience is also very amused. Arnold says he'll do anything Kotter wants, like wash his car for the next 7 years, and we already know from the previous episode that Kotter doesn't have a car. He just takes the bus. Arnold even offers to trim Mr. Kotter's mustache, definitely crossing some lines. Kotter says Arnold is drooling on his pants and they're not drip dry. It's not suggestive, it's just weird. Kotter tells Arnold to sit down, so Arnold says, well, and sits. As Kotter hands out the report cards, he says they can talk to him about their grades and possibly how to improve them. If they'd like to know how to make an F into a B, they can see him right after homeroom. And it might be that they could do so much classwork that they could raise their grade that much, I presume, by the end of the school year. But he also might be talking about the thing where you can write on the letter F and make it look like a B. The bell rings. The redhead looks stunned by his grade. Juan goes to Kotter and looks sad. Like Robert Hedges is going for an Emmy, he says, "Thanks, Mr. Kotter, you just killed my mother." There's laughter, applause, and whistles. Some of the class has already left, but Freddie is still sitting looking at his report card. He slowly stands, looks at Kotter, puts his hands on his hips, and looks between Kotter and the card. He takes back the apple and bites into it like it's an F-U gesture. There's laughter and applause at this wordless bit. Arnold hands Vinnie back his card and laughs. Vinnie glares at him. There's laughter and applause as Arnold gets up and starts to leave. And I think it's just that the audience really enjoys Arnold's laugh. Kotter calls his name, so Arnold comes back and does a one-syllable version of his laugh like, "Yes?" There's brief laughter, applause, and whistles. Kotter asks what's so funny. Arnold says he thought his report card was bad until he got a look at Vinnie's. He laughs and exits. Now that he's the only student left, Vinnie gets up and asks how he can take his report card home to his mother. That woman is a saint. Kotter remembers, and of course that came up on the pilot, that Vinnie's mother is a saint, and I think we'll hear about it more as the series goes on. Kotter asks if Vinnie's mother will be upset. Vinnie says Kotter probably has no idea what it feels like to get hit by beads, and I assume those are prayer beads. So she's a saint, but she's also violent. Kotter asks Vinnie if he thinks Kotter enjoys failing him. Vinnie says that's how you teachers get your jollies. Kotter says he doesn't, and he closes the door. He's not going to pass Vinnie unless Vinnie earns it, because it wouldn't be fair to Vinnie. Suppose all his teachers just passed him along and he didn't learn anything. What does Vinnie think he'd wind up being? Vinnie thinks he'd be a high school graduate, and he briefly smiles. Kotter asks what grade Vinnie thinks he should get. Vinnie can't believe his luck. He thinks Kotter should give him an A. So Kotter says, "A." But I don't think it's a Fonzie impression because the hands are spread without the pointing thumbs and the delivery isn't quite right. But it would have been cool if he had done that because that was very hot as a catchphrase in late 1975 and for a few more years. Vinnie says that's not the kind of A he had in mind. Kotter says it's the only kind of A he's going to get. He doesn't think Vinnie should be failing because he's a kid with brains. And this has come up before, like in Basket Case, where he felt like Freddie wasn't trying hard enough and he's a smart kid and he should be doing better. Kotter says if Vinnie doesn't get it together, he'll be left back. How would his mother like that? Vinnie says she wouldn't. I'll go into this more as the seasons go by, but I think that they're juniors that year, maybe sophomores, but Arnold at least is old enough to drive. They are still in high school in season 4, except for Vinnie, for reasons I'll get into then. Kotter wants to help Vinnie, but he doesn't know what to do. Then he immediately thinks of getting Vinnie a tutor, someone to work with him after school. He says it won't be that bad. Vinnie reluctantly agrees, but he asks if there's any way that they could do this without books. Kotter shakes his head in disbelief. There's applause as we fade to the next scene. Kotter is drinking coffee on the staff lounge couch. We know it's after school because he's taken off his jacket. Judy Borden enters in a short but loose dark blue dress with dark hose and I think black pumps. This is the most dressed up she is in this episode. She wears slacks later. I'll talk a little bit about that. They greet each other and then he takes her books. He thinks it's great that she offered to tutor Vinnie after school. I don't know if Kotter approached Judy specifically or if he just talked to one of her teachers, if she volunteered. The phrasing is a little bit odd here and elsewhere. She says a lot of kids in the academically enriched class do it, meaning tutoring. It seems to work better when kids help kids. They're explaining the concept of tutoring. We hear that she's in the academically enriched class. The gifted class is another thing they called it back then. Vinnie enters with his arm around a thin girl with long blonde hair. He calls her Princess and thanks her for walking him to class. This, I think, is her nickname rather than a pet name. She doesn't have any lines and she's uncredited. When it becomes clear that she was carrying his books, the audience laughs, squeals, and claps like he's the man. Instead of carrying a girl's books, he makes her carry his. He says he'll meet her later at the usual place, behind the billboards on 84th Street. And yes, this is the same place that Vinnie wanted to marry Sylvia on the pilot. Presumably Princess doesn't know about Sylvia, and of course we have not seen Sylvia since. Vinnie checks Princess's chin and she leaves with a dreamy smile like she can't wait to meet him behind the billboards. He closes the door and says, so, Judy's going to be his tutor. He tells her to start tootin'. I don't know if that was a fart joke or just a silly pun. He says says he wants to get out of here and have a good time, so he's in a hurry. She wants to get one thing straight. She's not doing this because she likes him. And that line can be read a few different ways based on what's coming up. It could be that she dislikes him as a person, or it could be that she's denying that she's attracted to him. Either way, she's doing this because this is just something that the academically enriched do to help other students. I assume it's unpaid. They'd never mention her getting a salary for this, but presumably it'll look good on her transcripts when she applies for college. Kotter comes over and says he sees that they're getting along just fine, and of course they are butting heads, and we'll see more of that, but this is for the moment good enough for him. He says he has some papers to grade, so he's going to leave them alone. He could just grade the papers in the lounge, but maybe he wants someplace quieter. He tells them to have fun. He grabs his jacket and is about to exit, but Vinnie starts to follow him. Judy asks where Vinnie is going, and Vinnie says Kotter said to have fun. Vinnie grins and says he's going to meet Princess behind the billboards on 84th Street. Kotter says no a few times and says Vinnie is going to get tutored. Kotter is going to meet Princess behind the billboards on 84th Street. There's laughter, applause, and whistles at this joke that is aged very badly. Judy and Vinnie reluctantly sit down at the little round table that we saw on the basket case episode, and also the debate episode, I believe. Since it's their first session, Kotter will stay for a while. Judy starts opening books and tells Vinnie to open up his social studies book to page 27. I don't know if he is taking the same social studies class. My guess is she probably took it last year and she remembers the page numbers. He does his wet wear routine with his arms crossed and leaning back in his chair, to her understandable annoyance. He tells her not to rush him. This ain't easy for him. He never opened a book before, and I guess Trailer Park Cutie doesn't count. He's talking about textbooks. Kotter, who's got himself a cup of coffee, takes a seat and asks Vinnie if he's going to cooperate. Judy says it's okay. She can handle it. Then she says, "Listen, clown, either you open up that book or I'm going to make you eat it. And the pages you don't eat, I'm going to stick in your ear." Kotter is so surprised he almost spits out his coffee. There's laughter and brief applause. Vinnie laughs scornfully. He doesn't think Judy knows who she's dealing with. He's the best ranker at Buchanan, and that came up, of course, on the pilot. She says he thinks he's so smart. He acts as if he was first online when they handed out brains, and that is a very Eastern thing to say, online rather than inline. And of course that was before being online with the internet. Vinnie says yeah, he was. She says he had to hold the door for everybody else. There's laughter and applause. Kotter looks amused and impressed. We've had Judy somewhat insulting the sweat hogs and back and forth, but I think this is the first time we've really seen so much of this in one-on-one. Vinnie tells Kotter that she's asking for it by continuing to insult him, but she's not discouraged. She tells Vinnie he's so low he could crawl under a pregnant ant. Both Kotter and the studio audience enjoy that one a lot. She's standing now, so Vinnie stands too and calls her Blimpo, which is a fat joke, and we will get a bit more of that. She glares at him. He tells her to watch herself or he'll let the air out of her dress. So I think that's one reason she's wearing a dress in this scene, because it wouldn't make sense to say let the air out of her blouse or her slacks. The audience likes that remark, but Kotter mimes that it's so-so. Vinnie says the last time Judy went to Coney Island, she was wearing a white bathing suit and got mistaken for Moby Dick. The audience likes that one too, and Kotter claps but says that that's enough. And yes, it's a literary reference to the great white whale of literature. So even though Vinnie hasn't cracked open a book, maybe he's seen a movie version or maybe a comic book. Judy says she heard that Vinnie's father got a new job, riding shotgun on a garbage truck. There's not as much reaction to that, but Judy and Vinnie start yelling about each other's families. Kotter stops them and has them sit again. He says this is a tutoring session, not a ranking session. Neither Judy nor Vinnie sees anything wrong with the ranking. So I thought that was interesting. They're actually enjoying this. They like to insult each other. Even though she is a straight A student, she's definitely got a sarcastic side to her. Kotter says there's a time and a place for everything. They shouldn't do things like that in school. It's not right. Then, clearly enjoying himself, he demonstrates what it would be like if he ranked on them. He says Judy has 3 kids in her family, one of each. So yes, a gender joke. The audience and Vinnie really enjoy that. Kotter tells Vinnie when he was born, they took one look at his face, turned him over, and thought it was twins. So the joke is that Vinnie's face looks like a butt, or at least it did when he was a baby. Judy and the audience enjoy that remark. There's a snippet of the theme song as we go to commercial. I don't know how much time has passed, but probably not much if nobody has found out about Judy and Vinnie yet. They're standing outside Cotter's classroom, talking inaudibly and smiling at each other. She's in slacks, a sweater, and a collared shirt. The bell rings and the extras start heading into class. The redhead gives Judy and Vinnie an uncertain look. Of the extras in this episode, I would say he's the most prominent. Vinnie's friends come along and they look confused and or amused. Vinnie says after homeroom he'll meet Judy and walk her to the next class. She says sure, and they smile at each other a bit longer. So my impression is that they haven't done that yet, but they want to. She sounds infatuated when she says bye, so we see a softer Judy in this episode, at least at times. And he's still smiling even when she's walking away, so we can tell that he does like her. He's not just putting on an act to get her to help him with the tutoring, because she would have done that anyway. Vinnie is the last student into the classroom, and his smile fades as he sees his three friends in sort of a totem pole arrangement, pretending to be panting dogs, because the thing again of a dog meaning an ugly girl. The audience is very amused, and the three guys crack up, Arnold audibly doing his laugh. Arnold keeps pointing and saying, "You and Judy Borden?" He's not going anywhere with this, but he, Freddie, and Juan are very amused. Vinnie tells him to cut it, so Arnold chokes on a laugh. Vinnie says that Judy was just helping him with his grades. They scoff and laugh some more. Freddie puts his hand on Vinnie's shoulder and asks why Vinnie has been walking her to class, implying that this has been going on for a while. And then Freddie says, or should he say rolling her to class, because she's fat. And yes, Helene Lembeck is not fat, even by 70s TV standards, but that was already established as part of her character on earlier episodes. One slaps hands with Freddie and then Arnold, who as usual misses. Kotter comes in and tells them all to sit. He wants them to take out their report cards, which should have been signed by their parents. Again, probably not much time has passed. Maybe this is the next day or a couple days later. They had time to take their report cards home, but beyond that, who knows? Kotter comes around to collect the cards. Vinnie's is soggy because his mother cried on it. I don't know if he told her that he's getting tutoring. Juan's mother only got as far as Mrs. E before she lost consciousness. This amuses the redhead, although he mostly looks ticked off about his own report card. Kotter keeps collecting the cards, but Freddie stands and says, "Hi there." He says he doesn't have his report card here handy. That was another catchphrase for Washington. I don't have it here handy, but not as well known as the hi there. Freddie says his mama has the card, but she didn't sign it. She took it in her left hand and hit him upside his head with her right. Then she threw a chair at him, and then pretending to be upset, he says, then she tried to cave his back in with the TV set. The audience enjoys that, and yes, it's probably all made up, but it's just weird to me, all these jokes about the parents abusing the kids. Kotter suggests Freddie have his father sign it, but Freddie says his father is the one with a bad temper, and I think it was in the pilot he had the joke about the Lincoln-Douglas debate where his father was beating up his brother. Kotter takes the last report card from the new brunette white girl. He tells Freddie what he told Juan, that he wants their report card by tomorrow. So all I know is this is not a Friday. Kotter says they act like they're the only ones who ever had to take a bad report card home and show it to their parents. He had a lot of bad ones in his day. And that makes me wonder, how did Kotter get into college? Did he pick up his grades in his senior year, or just did he go to a very lax college? Freddie asks what Kotter's daddy used to do, and that's the same thing as in Classroom Marriage, where he referred to Vernigene's daddy rather than Pop or Papa or father or dad or what have you. Kotter's father used to sit him down and say, and then Kotter does an imitation of his father, which is actually pretty close to what we will get when we meet Kotter's father. So listen, you got a bad report card. Big deal. No one's going to holler. We're not going to scream. No one's going to hit you. Just go back to school and you try to do the best you can. And next time, if you should pass, well, then we'll untie you and let you eat again. At first, it sounds like Kotter had a very understanding father, and then it turns out that he was also abusive. The class doesn't really react. The bell rings. Kotter reminds Freddie and Epstein about tomorrow, so Juan says mañana because he's Puerto Rican, and Arnold says it was grand seeing Mr. Kotter again. Presumably the reception at home was more positive for him. When almost everyone has left or is about to, Judy comes in and she and Kotter say hi to each other. She goes over to where Vinnie is sitting and they say hi to each other. She says let's go, but he stands and tells her to hold on a second. He's got something he wants to tell her. He hesitates and then says he can't walk her to class no more. So clearly she's not tutoring him in English, and maybe he did walk her to class earlier. She looks confused and a little hurt as she asks why not. He hesitates again and then says he has a certain image he has to uphold. There's a cut to Kotter at his desk looking disappointed. Vinnie continues, if he was always walking her to class all the time, his friends might get the wrong idea or something. And of course they already have. Sounding both hurt and angry, she asks, what wrong idea? Vinnie says, like they was going together or something. She says, and he wouldn't want his friends to think that someone like him could ever possibly go out with someone like her. He's relieved and exclaims, right! He's glad she's being so reasonable about this. And there's a cut to Kotter looking disgusted. Vinnie says she can still keep tutoring him and stuff. That'd be good. She sarcastically thanks him and says he can go over to the Texaco station and sit on an air hose. The audience likes that. She runs out. Vinnie asks Kotter what's wrong with her. Kotter says she made the same mistake he did. She tried to help Vinnie. She thought there was somebody worth helping inside that dopey leather jacket. Vinnie says he likes Judy, so I thought that was interesting that he admits that. Kotter says Vinnie liked Judy until he decided she wasn't cute enough to hang around with Steve Stunning, which I have to say is a very 70s sounding nickname. Vinnie looks like he's starting to feel bad. Kotter says this whole thing started because he didn't want Vinnie to fail social studies, but he's failing something a lot more important. He's failing life. So he wants Vinnie to take Judy's advice and go sit on an air hose. In a way, harsher than telling him to put a rubber nose up his hose. Vinnie says, now you made me feel bad. He exits to light applause, and Kotter shakes his head. Back in the hallway, Judy is sitting on the bench, looking like she might cry. So it's interesting, she could have just run off. This seems more like the Sweat Hogs hallway, but she, I think maybe in a way, hoped that Vinnie or Mr. Kotter would come and talk to her. Vinnie hesitates and then comes back. He cheerfully asks if she minds if he sits down. She tells him, oh, get lost, Pea-Brain. He says, thanks, don't mind if I do. He sits next to her and she scoots the other end. He scoots closer and she asks if he can risk being seen with her. He says what he said in the classroom didn't come out like he meant it. He starts to say he likes her, but she tells him to go to the Brooklyn Bridge, take a sharp left, and don't stop walking till his hat floats. And of course he's not wearing a hat. He says she's not making this any easier. He's trying to apologize. She says, for what? Being a reject? That's not your fault. You were probably born that way. Someone in the audience audibly says, oh. Like, of all the insults, this is the one that cuts the deepest. Vinnie says, oh, you got a mouth on you. I'll talk about this more, but I think that Vinnie has never really dealt with a woman that pushes back like this. It's frustrating for him, but I think it's also attractive. Judy stands and walks closer to the doorway. He follows her and tells her to give him a break. With her back to him, he hesitantly asks if she'd want to go out someplace with him, in public. She turns and says, let me get this straight. She sweetly says, are you asking me to go out with you, Vinnie? He smiles and says, yeah, would you go out with me? Spitefully, she says, probably not. He can't believe this because he's Vinnie Barbarino, and this is the thing of he loves to say his full name. Her exit line is drop dead, pizza head, which is kind of an ethnic slur because he's Italian, although maybe she's also implying they had zits. There's applause, whistles, and cheers, and I think that although she's not entirely a sympathetic character, she is humanized enough in this episode, and they like seeing the vain, good-looking guy taken down a couple notches. They like that she didn't just say, oh, you really do like me, yes, I'll go out with you, because that wouldn't be Judy. They like that she is ticked off, and she's going to have the last word. Kotter has come out of the classroom to catch this last part, and he also calls Vinnie a pizza head. They both sit on the bench, and Vinnie again can't believe that Judy turned him down. Girls don't turn down Vinnie Barbarino, especially ones who ain't as cute as him. Kotter looks at him, so Vinnie says she's cute as him, but just barely, which is a pretty big concession. Kotter laughs, but then seriously tells Vinnie that now he knows how Judy felt. Rejected. Then he encourages Vinnie to keep trying to ask Judy out, which is kind of shaky and becomes even more dubious when he tells a story about Dolores Del Vecchio, and I wondered if she was any relation to Al on Happy Days. In high school, Gabe asked Dolores out 15 times. She turned him down 14 times, and then the 15th time, her brother Vito threatened to rearrange Gabe's nose until it permanently pointed towards Philadelphia. I can see that the case can be made that Vinnie handled this badly. He could make amends and apologize to Judy better and ask her out, but the idea that you're supposed to repeatedly ask out a girl who says no is another thing that has not aged well. The applause includes whistles as we fade to the next scene. We're back in the hallway, but it's a different day based on the outfits. The bell rings and Freddie comes out and says, God bless 3 o'clock. So we know that their class with Mr. Kotter, at least at this point in the year, is the last class of the day. I don't think that's consistent, but whatever. The male lecturers who follow him are equally happy. Arnold hands Freddie his books and says he can't wait to get to Coney Island this afternoon. I think that they are Freddie's books that Arnold carried out of the classroom, but they don't say. And yes, we get another mention of Coney Island after the Moby Dick joke, and there will be a bit more done with this, although of course we won't see them at Coney Island. Arnold says they got a new attraction, half man, half alligator. He's his own wallet, and he laughs. One says, "Hey, let's go," and puts his arm around the new female extra. Freddie imitates this with the black girl. And yes, there is no sign of Verna Jean in this episode. It's like she just doesn't exist. There's also no Mr. Woodman, and it would have been interesting to have him do a few lines about how the sweat hogs are doing with the report cards. Arnold also says, "Hey, let's go," but he has to mime his date by putting his arm around air. This reads a few different ways. One is that Arnold just isn't very lucky with girls, but of course, as always, I wonder about the subtext because Ron Palillo was gay. You could interpret this as Arnold is closeted. Vinnie enters from upstage, and his arm is around Judy, who's smiling up at him. So whatever happened off screen, he did make it up to Judy, and they're going out. This time, she's in wide blue slacks, maybe jeans, a collared shirt, and a blazer. Vinnie asks what's happening. One says they're going to Coney Island, so Vinnie says they'll go along, meaning him and Judy. Freddie asks if Judy is going as Vinnie's date or one of the rides. Juan, Arnold, and the girls are amused. Kotter has entered unobserved and gone to the drinking fountain, so now he hovers in the background, looking worried. It's like they can't have a scene without Gabe Kaplan in it for very long. Judy tells Washington to fold it in 3 corners and stick it, but Vinnie tells her to take it easy. So she's about to mouth off to Washington because he just insulted her. Vinnie says Judy is going as his date, and is there anything wrong with that? So he's being defiant and standing up for Judy and for himself for going out with her. Freddie says it's cool. Arnold again goes, "You and her," and he laughs, but Vinnie only has to say "Horseshack" for Arnold to switch to. Very attractive couple you two make. Judy says, "Nice to see you again, Arnold." She knows that he was going to insult her, but he did back down. And this is an episode where Vinnie is affected by peer pressure, but he also asserts his leadership of the Sweat Hogs when he needs to. The guys and their dates, including Arnold's invisible girl, start to head out, but Kotter wants to talk to Vinnie. He's really proud of Vinnie, who's learned something a lot more important than social studies, so underlining that, well, hopefully Vinnie will improve his grades. He also needs to learn about life and girls and so on. Vinnie shakes Kotter's hand and says he knows. He invites Kotter to Coney Island, but Gabe says, "I gotta go home and tell my wife a joke," which I thought was the funniest line in the episode because he does that every day. And he could have called up Julie and said, "Hey, you want to go to Coney Island?" And she probably would have been up for it. There's a snippet of the theme and applause as Vinnie puts an arm around Judy and they exit. Kotter smiles and nods, either because he's proud of Vinnie or because he's looking forward to telling Julie a joke. In the tag, I think the Kotters are eating bowls of ice cream. He's in a similar outfit to in the opening, but in different colors. Julie looks incredibly 70s with denim overalls, a light blue long sleeve shirt, black socks, and platform sandals. Gabe talks about his cousin, gorgeous Jerry Kotter, and I wondered if the connection here is that Vinnie is also gorgeous and vain. Gabe says last week Jerry was in a barber shop getting a shave, shoe shine, and manicure. I guess still happened in the 70s. It sounds very dated. Just even the idea of men getting manicures is something that was more common, I think, in the 1920s than the 2020s. Gabe says Jerry really likes to look nice. The girl giving him a manicure was really nice. A lot of use of the word nice in this episode and the previous one. So Jerry asked her out. She said she'd like to go out, but she has a boyfriend. Jerry suggested she tell him she's going out with the girls. She said, "Why don't you tell him? He's shaving you." So yes, there are 2 jokes about shaving and possibly throat cutting in one episode. Both Kotters laugh. I am very fond of the Judy character, and so I found this episode particularly disappointing. I give each of these episodes a letter grade like in a classroom, so from F- to A+, and I thought about a B-, but there was so much I didn't like that I ended up going with a C+, so above average, but yeah. I think there is a better episode trapped in this one, and actually the other Eric Cohen episode so far, The Election, also got a C+. And in that one, Judy and Vinnie were running against each other for president. There's an interesting idea here. Vinnie has to think about what is really important in a friend and in a potential girlfriend. Is it just about looks? Is it personality? What about intelligence? And it's definitely, this is one of those enemies to lovers, not quite kind of ships. And if I remember correctly, they didn't go anywhere with this. They just kind of threw it out as a possibility. And I think the next Judy episode, she's just sort of back to being a punching bag for the Sweat Hogs in general. Some of the jokes didn't quite land, although it was nice to get another note with Epstein, and there were some cute moments. But the stuff aside from Judy, I just felt like it was all right. Yeah, too much about the parents, including Gabe's father, being abusive. That just bothered me. As far as the Judy and Vinnie thing, there is some chemistry there. As I said, I think part of the attraction is that she can rank right along with him. He's not used to that in a girl. And I think we have so far seen Vinnie with very compliant and adoring girls, including Princess. And Judy pushes back. She argues and insults and keeps him on his toes. And I think that that is interesting to him. As far as her attraction to him, I don't really know. I mean, obviously, he is very good looking and he can be charming and even nice when he makes an effort. And yeah, there's probably some attraction for her that he will argue with her. Wouldn't say that that is enough in itself. There's just all this in the way of their relationship, including Vinnie's own ideas about what kind of girl he should go out with. If it were just that Judy and Vinnie become friends while she's tutoring him and everybody else thinks there's something romantic, that would be an interesting way to go. Or they realize that they have feelings for each other, even though it started out as friends. But there's just so much ambiguity about what actually is going on here that it's hard to know where it's going to land. Kotter is doing his usual thing of trying to improve and guide the Sweat Hogs. For the most part, he's sympathetic, other than enjoying insulting his students and Judy a little too much, and yes, making the questionable joke about meeting up with Princess. Julie is back to her peripheral role of just cold opening and tags, so I wouldn't say she particularly has much impact on the episode. I'd also choose a head of the class, not necessarily a student, and it is the character that I most enjoyed watching in the episode. There's no question that it is Judy. I have enjoyed her in her previous appearances, but here we get some more depth. We see her vulnerable, but also more feisty in some ways. She has to play different tones, sometimes even within one line, and so I thought Helene Lembeck did really well with that. This could have very much been a stereotypical fat girl role, even though, again, she's not fat, not that it matters. And she does a lot with it, while still being consistent with the Judy that we've seen before, so just kind of growing out of that. I don't remember if we get another episode where she gets to show this kind of range. I don't think so. So I appreciate the episode for that, but I feel like Judy deserves an episode that's as good as she is, and this isn't it. Not too happy with the behavior of Vinnie's friends, but they can definitely be jerks, especially in the first season. Next time I'll be looking at the episode California Dreamin', which at the time was one of my favorites, and I still have a soft spot for it, so we'll see how it holds up on viewing again. In the meantime, remember, social studies is important, but not as important as life.
Tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back.